Hi folks, I'm Gene McLaughlin. I'd like to welcome you to Old Bridge Outlook with Mayor Owen Henry. On this program, the mayor has a chance to talk to you about things taking place in the township and to make you aware of people making things happen. And today we are delighted to welcome our guest, a member of the greatest generation, a man who served in World War II, served nobly in World War II, and he's going to be the Grand Marshal of our Memorial Day Parade. Phil Tanala. Phil, welcome.
Yes.
Pleasure having you with us.
Thank
We're honored
you.
to have you here. Mayor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Gene. Thank you.
Good. Phil, if we can get right to it with you, a little background on yourself. Where were you born?
In Newark, New Jersey.
Can I say what year?
Babies Hospital on June the 25th, 1924.
Wow. So if my math's correct, it's 95 this year, huh?
Yes.
God bless you. Great job. Okay.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to talk about you in World War II. As I said, you're a member of the greatest generation. You tried to enlist in the Air Force when you were only 17 years old. What happened?
All right, what happened, most of my friends and all had joined the service, either drafted or different branches and so on. So I wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
I went to the recruiting office in the federal building in Newark and got the papers to be a pilot. And I submitted, though my father signed for me, I submitted the papers, and then when I was called, I was so dejected because I was turned down, because when I was 7 years old, I was in a tuberculosis sanatorium for 9 months. And because of, I wouldn't be able to be in a plane because of the problem of oxygen and so on.
Okay.
So walking down the hall, they had started a new recruiting office for the maritime service, basically known as the Merchant Marine.
Yes, sir.
And so I got the papers, and my father signed me, and I was able to become an able-bodied seaman through basic training, 3 months of basic training in Sheepshead Bay, New York,
Really?
next to the Coast Guard base.
And where did you go then? You went to Newport News, Virginia?
We had a load of bombs leaving Newport News, Virginia, in the Atlantic, and getting across the Atlantic to North Africa. I steered the ship through the Straits of Gibraltar and
Interesting.
so
That
on.
had to be a lot of responsibility, Phil.
In Oran, North Africa, we got word that we were the last ship to join the convoy to leave for Bari, Italy. And so after spending 4 hours batting down hatches and stuff like that as a deckhand, I went to bed. The knock came on the door. The bosun said, "Phil, why don't you go out on deck? They're laying a smoke screen over the convoy because reports of German planes." So I said, "I'm too tired," and I went back to sleep. Next thing I knew, I heard bang, bang, bang. 6 German planes were strafing our ships, and their shells bouncing metal on deck made a tremendous noise.
I bet it did. Did any of it explode?
I jumped up, grabbed my picture, my wife's, my girlfriend's picture off the wall, my pants with the other, ran out into the hallway. 3 of us sailors get stuck going through the door at the same time. And sure enough, there was a smoke screen over the whole convoy. And we stood there for a few minutes watching it start to dissipate. So I said to my buddy Frank Papp, I said, "Frank, let's go up and relieve the gun crew on the 20 millimeter on the bridge." I had 50 caliber and 20 millimeter training. So we go up, and the first thing I see against the smokestack was a naval officer with his .45 out, ready to shoot a sailor who was up against the smokestack. And I jumped in between. I said, "What's going on?" And he says, he left his gun, the 20 millimeter gun, in the gun turret, and we have orders if anybody leaves their post to shoot them.
That's not good,
I
Mayor.
said, "Look," I said, "he's an American like you are and like I am. Let him go."
Right.
And the officer put his gun down, and that kid was shivering.
I bet he was.
Sure he was going to be dead.
Excuse me a minute, Phil, if I may. Mayor, Phil was only 18 years old when he was doing all this.
So Frankie and I get in the gun turret. I get in the swivel seat behind the gun. Now the shells are this large, all right? And all of a sudden somebody yelled, "Here they come again!" And we were taught, when you get it on target, keep your finger on the trigger, count 1, 2, 3, 4, take it off, get it on the track again, and count 1, 2, 3. I never took my finger off the trigger, and I'm yelling, "Come on, I got you, I got you." I could see every third shell was a tracer, and I could see my shells hitting the tail of the plane.
Right.
The plane goes by so fast, but I could see the 20 millimeter on the deck, his shells hitting the tail of the plane.
Okay.
Now it's a half a moon. The plane slowed down, goes around, drops an aerial torpedo, aiming it at a troop transport right in front of us. Now, at that time, we could actually see the torpedo being dropped against the half a moon. And at that time, our 3-inch 50 in the front, the big gun, let go. He hits the plane. The plane bounced 3 times, and the nose goes in the water. Now the torpedo travels slow in the water, misses the troop transport, and as the convoy is moving, there was a tanker next to us. The torpedo hits the tanker. I never saw a flame go up so high in the air as that tanker, and it seemed like a minute or two before you knew it, metal against metal pieces dropping on our deck. At the same time, other ships seen every little thing in the water. They think it's a submarine. They're shooting at it. Their shells are bouncing up across our ship. And I always wondered. I asked the seaman in the front of the ship, what happened to the pilot of the plane that we shot down? They said he got out of the plane. He jumped out of the plane before it hit the water. And it's always on my mind on whether that pilot survived or not.
Phil, if I can ask you to do one thing.
I see this over and over, especially now. Right after the war, we only had ideas to get married right away and so on, and forget everything that happened in the war. But all those things keep coming back to me.
Phil, tell us about the Murmansk run. That seemed to be one of the high spots of your career there.
The Murmansk run, four of us buddies always, we had to ship out of union halls because the ships were leased to shipping companies that carried the cargo and so on. All right, we had a cargo load of trucks, jeeps, clothes for our troops and our allies.
Going to Russia?
Going to Russia.
Wow.
All right? Going to Russia now, there were always submarines. That's when most ships were being sunk.
These were Japanese?
German submarines.
Okay.
And so the U.S. got smart. They put for the ship convoy, they put a destroyer around each corner of the convoy. And they would drop depth charges that would explode after hitting a certain depth in the water. When that depth charge went off, it would shake the whole ship,
Right.
and shake all of us, and especially the men working in the engine room. They knew if the ship was hit, they didn't even have a chance of getting out. They would come up the steps of the engine room, faces white.
It seemed like the most.
Not surviving.
Yeah.
It seemed like the most dangerous mission that you went on.
It took 6 weeks to get across to zigzagging to Gorak, Scotland. And Gorak, Scotland, we picked up Russian sailors that were taking over a British cruiser.
Oh, really?
And we took them to Mermans, and that is a whole another story. On that trip alone, I could write a book.
Yeah, I bet you could. It seemed like in one of your...
First trip, second trip, and the last trip could be all separate books.
But you lost a lot of people on those runs, right? A lot of the
yes.
sailors were lost, huh? Merchant
Yes,
men
well,
lost.
what happened was
The danger?
I slept with my clothes on for 15 days because we had rumors that if you were on deck, and we used to put cots out on deck to sleep on deck.
Okay.
And if you were thrown in the water, you had a chance to survive. So that's the kind of thing that we had to go through.
Okay.
And
Would you say it was your most dangerous mission? Was it your most dangerous mission?
that one and the first one when I saw action with the 20 millimeter.
Okay. Well, Phil, I'm going to ask you to hold your thought for a minute. We're going to be taking a break. We're going to take a break for a minute. We can chat a little bit more. Folks, we're talking with Phil Tanala, who is our Grand Marshal of the Memorial Day Parade. He's here today to talk about his career, his background during service in the Merchant Marine during World War II. As I've said once before, a Merchant Marine, he was one of the greatest generations. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
Disaster tips from the objects left behind.
My home wasn't insured, but you can check your insurance policy now to make sure you're covered. Oh.
My savings are lost, but you can put money aside and plan for unexpected disaster costs.
We're lost forever, but you can scan important documents now so they survive.
For more tips on how to prepare, visit ready.gov.
$150/90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. That means it could be you, your dog walker,
On your left.
your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Folks, welcome back to Old Bridge Outlook with Mayor Owen Henry. Today our guest is Phil Tanala, who is going to be the Grand Marshal of our parade on Memorial Day. And Phil has been a veteran of World War II, and he's sharing some of his experiences with us right now. Phil, if we can pick up, one of your last trips was through the Panama Canal to get to where? To Manila? How'd that work?
Okay, we left Newport News in the Atlantic. And again, I was asked to stay at the wheel going through the Panama Canal.
That's amazing.
Whoever is at the wheel going in has to stay at the wheel all the way through, even after you get through the locks and the canal.
Right.
A lot of currents change.
Yeah.
All right, going through the canal, there was a sailor with a .45 standing next to me when I was at the wheel, ready to shoot me in case I sabotaged the ship.
God. That's an
There was
adventure in itself. Huh?
one in the engine room with his .45 out, one in the bow, and one in the rear, with the same orders. That was one of my biggest thrills, was going through the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
Let's see, thousands of monkeys, all different sizes, swinging through the jungles with the ship. Okay, an engine on the dock. We had a mooring line tied to it. It would pull us into the lock, fill it up with water, and then pull us into the next lock, and so on. 12 o'clock, everything stopped. The engineer gets out of the train, lays on the ground, pulls his sombrero over his head and all, and takes his half-hour nap, and drinks his wine.
Phil, at the end of this trip, you ended up in Okinawa?
Okay, what happened was, getting through the canal, it took 6 weeks to get across the Pacific,
Really?
dodging Japanese submarines. We get to Manila. I was in Manila when the President Roosevelt died.
Okay.
From Manila, we took the load of bombs to Guadalcanal. At Guadalcanal, we were anchored there until the war ended with Japan. There were 3 aircraft carriers anchored also around us that was transporting troops into Japan to take over Japan. From there, we went to Yokohama. From Guadalcanal, we went to Yokohama, Japan. We were one of the first ships in Yokohama. I painted it in yellow on a gray gun turret, October 1st, to let everybody know that we were one of the first ships there. From there, they sent us, they didn't want the bombs because the war ended.
Right.
So they sent us around the other end of Japan to Kyoto. They didn't want the bombs. So then they sent us to Jinsen, Korea. This was before the Korean War.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And I said to the skipper, I said, let them send the barges out to us. We'll unload the bombs. And we did.
Okay.
And then it took the long trip back home.
And then you were home. Then you were out of the service, you were home, and what happened then?
We pulled into San Francisco, and at night, we were one of the closest ships to Alcatraz.
Okay, yeah.
So at night, we see a bunch of flares going up in the sky and all kinds of noise and so on. So we thought that they were welcoming us back into the U.S.,
sure.
right? We next morning, we got up. Over the radio, there was that, was it 3 or 5 men were escaping from Alcatraz, and that's when they
Okay, and then you got home. Then you got home to Newark, and you got married, and you settled in Newark.
Yes, August 3rd, 1946. My wife and I finally got married.
And you had how many children?
We settled down in Newark.
And how many children did you have?
I have two. They're in their 60s.
Okay.
All right, my son and my daughter. My son went on to become a teacher in the state vocational system for 30 years. He was also a member of the Howell Board of Education for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter is a marketing agent for
A major company?
a major company, but she was also assistant chief of staff to Governor Cody.
Okay.
Even though she was a Republican, and they knew she was Republican, Cody hired her, and she became assistant to what's his name? He's the chief of staff for Governor Murphy.
I don't know, Mayor.
I'm
not sure.
I can't remember his name now.
Phil, you managed to accumulate a great number of rewards and awards for your service as a volunteer. And one of the things I wanted to cite for the people was you received the State of New Jersey Distinguished Service Medal.
Yes.
Which is the highest military honor that the state bestows on anyone. That in itself is a tremendous reference for your service. The other thing is you volunteered a lot in Newark. What are some of the things you did? Because you got another award from the VFW for Person of the Year. You were Person of the Year of the VFW in one year in 1999. You became Person of the Year. What did you do in Newark? What was your volunteer activity? You did so much volunteer work in Newark. St. Lucy's and raising funds and that type of thing.
Yes, especially for St. Lucy's, who had 36 girls that were turned over to them by Sisters of the Poor because their parents were either alcoholics or drug addicts and so on. And the place that they were living in needed carpeting, hot water tank, furnace, blankets, a lot of things that normally the Sisters of Poor couldn't afford. We raised thousands and thousands of dollars for them. Also, we provided the Newark Police Department with the vests. And raised a lot of money for Infantile Paralysis Foundation. I had the ability to be able to raise funds.
Yeah, obviously, you did a good job.
Like I always have said, the Lord above has watched over me all my life. And the Lord led me to be able to raise those funds, even for politicians.
Talking a lot about politicians here, Mayor.
I'm trying to, it's okay.
Phil, how long have you lived in Old Bridge? When did you come to Old Bridge?
I came to Old Bridge in 1985.
Okay, and you're living where?
And I did a lot of volunteer work in the village. Eventually got elected as one of 7 trustees of Cheesequake Village. Cheesequake Village is made up of 713 condos.
Really?
289 buildings, 52 acres, and 1,100 seniors. And I was the trustee in charge of maintenance for 11 years and president for 6.
Okay. You know, Mayor, I feel we're sitting...
Phil's on my side.
Yeah. I feel we're sitting next to a living legend here, huh?
It is, Gene. Anybody familiar with World War II, and the branch of the service, the Merchant Marines, they were credited with winning the war. General MacArthur held them in the highest esteem of any other branch. Sitting next to Phil brings me back 45 years. My uncle, my father's brother, served 40 years in the Merchant Marines, and every time we got together, he was away a lot, but when he did come home, he spent hours and hours telling us stories similar to that. Motto was always, we deliver the goods. That was the greatest sea lift in the history of modern times. There was no more. They were credited with winning the war.
Right.
And you figured the United States was fighting on two fronts.
Yeah.
And they were supplying our soldiers with what they needed. Out of all the branches of service, they suffered the highest casualty ratio. I believe 1 in every 26 Merchant Marine lost their lives serving their country. My uncle went in the water twice.
Yes, very
story. It's just amazing, and they just have so many stories. And a few of my other uncles served in the other branches, and they considered this uncle who served in the Merchant Marines the hero of the family.
Really?
So that's what.
Why did it take so long?
See, in 1988,
yes, sir.
President Reagan found that there were more merchant seamen killed in World War II than servicemen. So that's when he gave us veterans benefits.
That's what I was going to ask you. That was the first time the Merchant Marine people were recognized as veterans.
And they were armed during the war. They were, they were responsible for. They were put in combat positions, and they transported hundreds. So they would go in, unload, and my uncle would tell me that they would unload all their stuff, and then they would take casualties back out to the hospital ships, and they've seen, the worst war had to offer.
I bet. Phil, looking back, what was your biggest memory of your experience? You were only in for 3 years, really, 1943 to 46, but you packed a lot into those 3 years, let me tell you. What was your biggest memory when you look back on it now?
Was I credit the basic training the 3 months of basic training that had helped me overcome a lot of obstacles on the whole 6 trips that I made.
Mm-hmm. You think that was your biggest memory, biggest experience, huh?
Yes.
Okay, well, Phil, I'll tell you, we're coming to the end of the program, but I want to thank you for your magnificent service.
Oh, thank you.
You did a tremendous job. We honor you.
It is a tremendous honor. I don't think you may not be aware of it, but I was the Grand Marshal 21 years ago.
That I don't remember. So you know what it's like to be the Grand Marshal, and you're back again.
But again, the mayor has recognized me and has placed me behind the band at the beginning of the parade every time he saw me.
Okay, Mayor, so that's how you do it, huh?
Please come out. Our Memorial Day Parade is one of our signature events here in town. Please come out, line the route, support Phil, show him you appreciate his years and years of service, not only in the military, but to mankind itself. Phil, you've been an outstanding citizen of this country and of our town. We really appreciate you having. We're lucky to have you in our midst, and I always appreciate you seeing you.
Phil, thank you again. Many more happy, productive years ahead.
Thank you.
You're still a relatively young guy.
Yeah. One thing, one person that I give a lot of credit to is my wife. 72 years we're married.
Okay. It's always a woman behind the man, right?
Yes.
A good woman behind a good man. Okay, well, Phil, thank you again. Best of luck. Stay well. And folks, we've been talking with Phil Tanala, who is going to be the Grand Marshal of the Memorial Day Parade. He's sharing with us some of his experiences during the war. I want to thank him again for being with us. And folks, this has been Old Bridge Outlook with Mayor Owen Henry. Please stay tuned. We'll see you again next time.